Oh, this? Yeah, well, it's not really locked down until someone that has no barber experience cuts your hair. And I sent this photo to my barber, and well, he might have laughed at it, so I guess there's that. But I don't think it's too bad, you know, it's a little bit off center. Probably not the best lineup. I guess there is a little bit of hair there as well that I might need to shave off. But in general, you know, this will get us through the next however long I am in lockdown and making content from my house as opposed to not from my house when I'm not in lockdown. But yeah, anyways, I thought I'd just clear that up. This is not from a barber, so no, I do not need to fire a barber because, yeah, this is not from a barber. I did not pay for this. Let's just get that out of the way. And let's talk about the underrated players in the NBA. One of the hardest things to measure. When you think about it, a lot of people will say, oh, well, this guy's underrated, and then everyone's like, yeah, he's underrated, and then people will continue to say that, and it's like, well, if everyone calls one player underrated, are they still underrated? Yeah, I know, dropping absolute knowledge on you guys right now to kick off the video. And maybe some of the guys I'm going to mention are in that category, but it's kind of hard for me to know. I can't keep up with every single person's opinion in the world when it comes to basketball. I try, but I can't exactly do that. So I just thought of players that I think for different reasons in terms of where I believe they sit in the NBA rankings, I consider them underrated. And I think not enough people talk about them in that light, if you know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, before I even get into this, if you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you knew, that would be much appreciated. Australia are 1-0. Sorry, United States, you're 0-1, but you'll come back. You'll come back. I know. It's hard. Patty Mills is the greatest player of all time. Patty Mills is the greatest player of all time. I mean, we could talk about him as being underrated, but can you underrate the GOAT? I mean, you can't really. You just can't. We can talk about that at another date. We're talking about another person who's not from the United States. OG Anunoby is from England, I believe. Let me not say that without knowing, but I'm pretty sure he is. And he is the guy who's going to kick off this list because I've been seeing a lot of top 50 lists going around. Yes, I saw B-Souls as one, but there was just other ones on Twitter and Instagram. Quite a handful of them I've seen, and I've yet to see OG Anunoby in anyone's top 50. Now, am I claiming he should be top 10? Well, no, let's not get carried away. Just top 20. But seriously, OG is in that range where he should be in the top 50, in my opinion, because you look at what he brings to the team. You look at what he brings. The man is elite on the defensive end of the floor. You can't talk about Anunoby and not start with his defense. Positions 1 through 5, yes. Embiid, Jokic, Jordan Clarkson, Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, switch him on to any of those guys. It doesn't matter. I've seen him guard Jokic for large portions of the game. Not just as in terms of switching onto him, like genuinely one-on-one matchups for large portions of the game. He is capable of doing that. He gets in the passing lanes. He's good at stealing the ball. He's a great isolation defender. He could probably improve off the ball and become a better help defender, which would take him to just a different stratosphere defensively, because in terms of isolation defense and going up against a number of different positions, a number of high-end offensive players, regardless of if they're point guards or centers, it doesn't really matter for him. He's as good as anyone in the league at doing it, and the numbers back it up as well. I'm not just talking out of my behind. The numbers back it up. You look at Basketball Index, and they rank him as the guy who guards the toughest matchups in the league. They rank him as the guy who has the best defensive versatility. This was before the end of the season, so I don't know if that changed, but he'd still be around the top 5. And I found the article where it says, you look at the positions he's guarded, and practically positions 1, 2, 3, and 5 are split across nearly 20%, about 18% each, and then he guards the power forward position about 25% of the time. So when you talk about 1 through 5, he exemplifies it. And then offensively, it's not like he's a slouch. He's averaging 16 and 5.5 rebounds a game, shoots nearly 40% from 3 on over 6 attempts a game, which is straight away good. He can shoot off the catch. He can get to his spots. He's improving at finishing at the rim. He's already a good offensive player when you consider his three-point shooting and the threat that brings. He can get downhill. He can take advantage of smaller opponents. He's got better at scoring in isolation and scoring off his own creation. He's still not great at that. Don't get me twisted. But in terms of offensively, he provides a decent amount. And defensively, I mean, positions 1 through 5, the hardest guys he has to guard every single night. The matchup difficulty of OG Anunoby is right up the top. No one else guards tougher players on every single possession. He's just a great player that needs a little bit more respect. I think we can all agree he's underrated. And someone else who maybe not everyone thinks is underrated, and I had to do some soul searching for this one. I had to think about, what do I consider a player in this kind of tier? You look at Devin Booker, you look at Donovan Mitchell, And immediately, you don't think Jamal Murray is in that tier. Now, hold with me for a second before you're like, well, he's not in that tier because he has an average 30 points a game. Hold with me. Hold with me. These are his numbers in the playoffs. 24 points a game, 6 assists a game, 4.5 rebounds, 47.3% from the field, 41% from three, and 90% from the line, averaging just over 2 turnovers a game. These are in 5 playoff series at the ages of 21 and 22. Now, his age doesn't matter. Like I said with OG, we're strictly speaking about what he provides right now. So that's incredibly impressive that he did it at 21 and 22. That is unbelievable and gets so overlooked. I don't know how that doesn't get enough credit. And as I said, I needed to do some soul searching because I was someone who kind of overlooked him as well. I'm like, oh, well, he's not really in that tier, but I think he is. I think he is. Now, regular season success, regular season production, granted. But when you look at the playoff numbers between the likes of Booker, Mitchell, Murray efficiency-wise is up there. He's the highest of them all. Murray in terms of consistency, not having one bad playoff series. Mitchell and Booker have both had bad playoff series. And don't tell me about, oh, he's playing with the MVP. Yes, he is. Those guys are on good teams. Come on, don't give me that. Jamal Murray scores in isolation. That man scores tough buckets. I know it's a bit of a cliche thing, but don't tell me that man just scores easy points because, I mean, if you watch the playoffs, you saw him against Utah, you saw him against the Clippers, you saw him against the Lakers, you've seen him against Portland in other series before. I mean, the man can cook. And his playoff numbers in himself put him in that tier, in my opinion. And, well, let's talk about his regular season because that's the reason why you would be hesitant to put him in that tier. And that's why I'd still have those two guys ahead of him because he does need to do it a bit higher in the regular season. But he still averaged 21 points a game in the regular season. His efficiency was really good. He just doesn't take a ton of shots. And can you blame him? I mean, like I said, he's playing with the MVP, which is a gift and a curse when it comes to being a gift that he's playing with the MVP, Nikola Jokic. And the curse is, well, his numbers aren't going to be as high because he's got Michael Porter Jr. and other guys around him that take his shots, and he's not a ball-hungry guy. But when you talk about fourth quarter scoring, when you talk about clutch scoring, Murray is that guy. He's someone who can take over games. When you talk about 21 points a game on good efficiency, when you talk about not turning the ball over, when you talk about a lot, because that's what I keep saying. But Jamal Murray just does so many things well. He's also not a defensive slouch. It's not like the defensive end of the floor is holding him back. He can play make. He's got underrated passing. I think the best I've seen him pass was against the Lakers in a few of those games when he couldn't quite score as much because, as I said, he was a little bit injured. He did look a little bit under fatigue / had a quad injury, but his passing in that game was good. So I've seen him be able to play make. I know he can do that. And as a scorer, he's as good as it gets when it comes to playoff time, when it comes to crunch time. I think Jamal Murray deserves to be in the same conversation as all of those guys when it comes to the best young guards in the league. I don't think he gets mentioned in that conversation enough, which is why I think he is underrated. And then moving on to probably the most polarizing guy on this list, someone who people either think is great. Well, actually, I don't know if there's that many people who think that anymore, but someone who people either completely hate or are of the same opinion of me who thinks he's a very impactful player. That's Draymond Green. Underrated, overhated. You could go for any of those words, but I think Draymond Green, you look at the Warriors, talked about this in the Warriors video I made before. In the first 6 games where Draymond missed a few of them and was not healthy in the last couple of them, he was still getting back to full health. The Warriors conceded 120 points or more in 5 of those first 6 games. Their defense was a shambles. They looked like the worst defense in the league. I think statistically they were the worst defense in the league through the first 6 games. Draymond gets healthy. They end the season as the 5th best defense. 5th. Look at that team and tell me that should be the 5th best defense in the league. And tell me that doesn't come down to Draymond Green being a generational defensive player, similar to OG Anunoby. He can switch positions, but unlike OG Anunoby, he has that elite rim protection for someone his size. He really prevents people from scoring well at the rim. He's someone who can switch onto different positions. As I said, he gets in the passing lanes. And then also his communication, which never gets talked about enough, but communication, leadership, things like that. He really organizes the troops, man. He's out there. He's calling the signals. He knows what's going on. He's just a different kind of defensive beast that needs to be treated as that. Rudy Gobert, Bam Adebayo, Ben Simmons, all of those guys that you want to rate so highly for defense. Draymond Green is just as high, if not better than that. He also gets just as good in the playoffs. He does not shrink in the playoffs by any means defensively. This guy is a beast. But he can't shoot the ball, but he can't score. Okay, but he's defensively a beast. As I said, the 5th best defense in the league, which they had absolutely no right to be. Let's talk about his scoring. He's a flawed player. That's why he's a hard guy to measure. what do you value more? The defense, the scoring, what do you value? You kind of need a little bit of both. And scoring wise, he needs to improve. And I think he understands that. But you also look at his offense. He's not a nil. He's a great passer. He's got a great chemistry with Steph Curry, which is easier said than done. People are like, oh, it's just Steph Curry making him look good. There's a reason Steph's numbers are better with Draymond. So let's not get it twisted. Steph is unbelievable, but Draymond sets the right screens. He makes the right passes. He makes the right reads. Steph has made it very clear Draymond is a very good passer. He understands that. He understands Draymond puts Steph in the right position to score on a lot of possessions. So let's not just take his offense for granted. As I said, communication as well is also key on the offensive end of the floor. He brings that. Passing wise, he's a really good passer. He's a pretty decent rebounder. He does so many things well. Sure, he can't shoot the ball. Sure, he struggles scoring. Sure, he missed a clutch shot at the end of a game, which is going to haunt him and haunt his legacy or whatever people want to say. But at the end of the day, he's a great player, and I think he's underrated as a whole. And then moving on to De'Aaron Fox, another guy who's an explosive guard from Kentucky. De'Aaron Fox, is he just underrated because he's in Sacramento? Yes. We don't give him enough credit. People like to discredit people for putting up numbers on a bad team because it's empty stats, it's all of those things. If you put up 25-7, if you put up 25-7, let me repeat that, with Luke Walton as your head coach and you're on the Sacramento Kings, just clap it up. Clap it up. Did you even know he put up 25-7? You probably did, but at the same time, did you even care because he's on the Sacramento Kings? No, you didn't, and hence he is underrated. I think he's just someone that flies completely under the radar. Second half of the season, post All-Star break, 29-7 just about, on pretty good efficiency as well. He gets to the rim, he gets downhill, he's taken over fourth quarters. I saw him against the Pelicans on a couple of occasions, take over games. He dropped a 40 bomb against the Golden State Warriors. I mean, in the second half of the season, the last 40 games, 18 of those games, he scored 30 points or more. Nearly 50% of the time, he was scoring 30 points or more. And as I said, he's not a shot chucker. He's not putting up inefficient nights. His three-point shooting is still a struggle. There's no doubts about that, but he gets to the free throw line and converts pretty well from there. He gets downhill. He finishes at the rim really, really good. He's just a speedy guy. He can break down defenses. He can find open shooters. He does so much for a Kings team that is just still... It's still the Kings, man. It's still the Kings, and I'm not going to discredit him for that. I'm going to elevate him for that he's doing this on a team that's not particularly great. It's far from great. It's the Kings. And I heard more people talking about Tyrese Halliburton in his rookie season, Marvin Bagley's father, Rashawn Holmes' push shots, than De'Aaron Fox putting up 30 points a night. This deserves more attention. When it comes to underrated, there's a few different ways you can talk about underrated, and De'Aaron Fox is just someone that just doesn't get enough attention. That's that simple. And speaking of another guy that doesn't get enough attention, Deandre Hunter. This is a different one. I talked about guys that I just think are underrated in the context of the best players in the NBA and how you rank those guys. This is someone who I think is underrated in the context of young players. I look at lists, the best second-year players, Zion, Ja. That's granted. We all know that. No one's going to dispute that. But then it gets to RJ Barrett. Then it gets to Jarrett Culver. No, it doesn't. Then it gets to Darius Garland. Then it gets to Kevin Porter Jr. And the list continues to go on. Where's Deandre Hunter? Where's the guy that locked up Julius Randle, the All-NBA guy, the All-NBA star, in his first playoff appearance? Where's the guy that was averaging 15 and 5 on nearly 50% from the field? Sure, his three-point shooting wasn't quite up to par, and I expect that to not continue because I think he's got a good enough three-point shot. He's good enough from the free throw line. He's good enough from the mid-range. But where's that guy? I know he only played over 20 games. When you're just talking about in terms of the best young players in the league, we've seen enough in the playoffs and in the regular season to suggest this is a two-way guy that is already making a huge impact both in the postseason and in the regular season. In the one series he played, his impact was sorely missed in the next series, which you can't say for a lot of second-year players. RJ Barrett, I'm not here to slander the guy, but Hunter was clearly more impactful. I think in the regular season, he's proven that he can put up numbers, he can shoot off the dribble, he can defend multiple positions, he can come over as a help defender, or he can go up against guys like Randall one-on-one, and then he can go up against smaller guys. I've seen him guard guys like Ja Morant. He does a lot of things really well, and I never really hear him get mentioned in the top 3 or 4 conversation for the best second-year player in the league, or in terms of really promising young players. That's how I think he's underrated. Just a little bit of a different context, but still the same thing. Underrated nonetheless. Deandre Hunter is most definitely that in my opinion. Anyways, that's my list of players. Let me know some of your guys' list, because I mean, everyone thinks someone's underrated, and these are the ones I think, which you might not agree with anyway. That's the reality. Have a good day. Bye.